Hey guys, so in today's video I want to share some of my thoughts on kind of inner conflict within the beauty community, specifically the impact of the boycotts that we keep implementing on brands. And to be clear, I don't want this to be the type of video where I'm telling you this is how you should think. I want this to be kind of a thought-provoking video and not just one-sided. I definitely want you to share your thoughts with me. This is something where I'm kind of trying to figure it out in my head without really knowing how to actually look at the numbers, see the impact on sales that these boycotts are having, etc. But of course, to do this video, I did do a lot of digging. So let me just start from the bottom here and tell you why I'm inspired to do this in the first place. For those of you who, eat, sleep, and breathe makeup, you probably already know about the Beautyblender, if you will. Trendmood posted a photo of Beautyblender's newest foundation, all of the shades. It was shocking to say the least. It was such an interesting situation, and my first thought upon seeing that was, wow, how on earth did a brand not learn from Tarte? How is that possible? And I'm going to assume that you guys know about that too. Earlier this year, Tarte released their Shape Tape foundation, which had an absolutely embarrassing shade range. It shocked the beauty community. Everybody had videos on it. A bunch of beauty influencers said they were no longer supporting Tarte. Nikki Tutorials pulled her video down. It was a gigantic fuss. So to see a brand so shortly after that release an equally embarrassing foundation range, it makes me wonder, did they not pay attention to anything in the beauty community? Do they live under a rock? But it gets even more interesting than that, because it doesn't stop with just it being an embarrassing shade range. It actually goes on in that Beautyblender themselves commented on Trendmood's photo and said, this photo just looks bad because there's a filter on the shade ranges. Which, of course, Trendmood says, no, I took it from your own video. Beautyblender clapped back with their own photo, which doesn't actually say anything whatsoever. And we have this very, very exemplary situation of the Streisand effect. Now, the Streisand effect is when a company attempts to suppress information, and the action of attempting to suppress it makes the issue blow up into something bigger. Example being, now here I'm talking about it, a whole bunch of people in the beauty community are talking about it. Can you believe Beautyblender did this? And I feel like most of us have heard somebody say something to the extent of no publicity is bad publicity, including bad publicity. And it just kind of becomes the situation of, is that true? Are we actually giving exposure to these brands when we talk about the negative things that they've done, the things that they should not have done? Are we making the brands bigger? So what I wanted to do, and what has ended up becoming so fascinating to me that I feel I should make a video on it, is I wanted to look at several brands that have, people have boycotted for one reason or another, and kind of look at their statistics in whichever ways that I was capable of looking at. It would be fantastic if I had their sales data. Unfortunately, I do not. Those are usually kind of kept a little bit more private. But I did think it would be interesting if I looked at the social blade of the Instagram of each one of these brands and see, since these boycotts started, have people stopped following them, or have they continued to grow in the amount of people that follow them? So my starting place was Nars Cosmetics. And the reason for this is because this drama happened in the middle of 2017. There's been a lot of time to see if the boycott against NARS has really been affecting them. If you missed the reason as to why people have decided to boycott NARS, it has to do with them, holding such a strong cruelty-free stance right up until the middle of 2017, at which point they decided to sell in China, thus making them no longer cruelty-free. I think a lot of people were very kind of personally affected by that solely because of NARS founders' previous stance. So I did look at NARS analytics, which I was able to find for January of 17 to April of 18. Everything kind of cuts off around April since some Facebook privacy drama. So we're getting a screenshot of that time, and it's just a consistent growth for NARS. So I said, okay, well, how about if they are still, you know, holding the position of bestsellers at Sephora and Ulta. And sure enough, Radiant Creamy Concealer is still on the top bestsellers page. So apparently NARS is still holding it down and apparently still growing. Now again, I don't know about their sales, but just from their analytics, they're doing okay. So then I figured, okay, we're absolutely going to see this with Tarte for reasons I've already mentioned. Nope, their growth is still fairly consistent. Although interestingly, I did notice that Tarte is not on the Sephora bestsellers page anywhere. However, they're still holding the #1 bestseller spot for their Shape Tape on the Ulta website. They actually have the #1 bestseller for foundation as well in their Amazonian Clay 12-hour full coverage foundation over on the Ulta site. I thought about other brands that have been associated with controversy. Huda Beauty, who I looked at and is continuing to grow. Jeffree Star, continuing to grow. Kat Von D, continuing to grow, although the analytics cut off in April. So that one I'm a little more iffy on. It'll be real interesting to see if we actually do see an impact with Kat Von D. And if you missed that, Kat Von D announced that she is anti-vax, which I have a science background, so I have a very hard time understanding how somebody can hold that position. But yes, that is something that I won't support either. So I know that many people have now sworn off Kat Von D, but I do know that Sephora is continuing to push her new releases, Kat Von D is continuing to push her new releases, and if it wasn't for the comments on Instagram, you'd probably never know that this happened. So at this point, it just kind of started to feel like no matter how much we are boycotting these brands, they are continuing to grow on Instagram, they're continuing to be on bestsellers list. So then I thought, okay, I need to look at a smaller brand and see if it actually has an impact on a less known brand. So you know what I thought of? Sparkage and Evie Blender. Now, if you somehow missed this one, this was a real popcorn event. Sparkage put up a video using the Evie Blender and basically called it terrible. It's this kind of silicone blender thing, and then Evie Blender said she wasn't using it correctly. A real fuss ensued, and a lot of people said that Evie Blender was unnecessarily coming for Sparkage. So I went into the statistics for this tiny little account, only has around 6,000 followers on Instagram, and would you believe that the drama caused a spark in their followers? An Sparkage? So to me, this was really shocking. I feel like this was such a small-scale example of how discussing brands that could potentially be problematic might actually be giving them more feedback, because otherwise, who would have heard of Evie Blender? And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm just saying that that absolutely did cause the spike, and you can very clearly see it. So then why don't these other brands have a spike? And my theory on this is that I suspect that the beauty community that actually follows this type of drama, for as large as we feel that it is probably really small. I was looking a little more at boycotts and what goes into a successful boycott. For example, the Rosa Parks versus the buses is a very well-recognized, successful boycott. And I think the reason that that worked is the amount of community involvement and publicity that that situation had. This was not just a select group of people who said, we are not going to ride the bus system until there is no more segregation. Instead, this was everybody coming together at a time in which they said, you know what, this is ridiculous, we need to stop this. You compare that to something like the Chick-fil-A boycott, or the Starbucks boycott, or the Target boycott, all of which have been very talked about, but none of which have actually been successful. In fact, we have receipts of each of those businesses doing better as a result of those boycotts. So what I'm forced to conclude is that these beauty brand boycotts are probably not as successful as maybe they feel to us, because we have to think about the bigger impact. We have to think about both Sephora and Ulta carrying all of these brands and continuing to promote them. You know, Sephora is never going to send out an email that says, did you guys know that Kat Von D is anti-vax and you should no longer support her brand? No, they're never going to say that. Sephora, who has this massive influence, is sending out all of this promotional material for Kat Von D to people who probably have no idea whatsoever. So I don't want this video to come off as like, oh, it's hopeless, might as well not even try. Instead, I want to end this as, what can we do to actually have more of an impact, aside from just within this very, very tiny little beauty community that, again, you know, if you can't see the forest for the trees, it seems like it's huge, but realistically, the amount of women who wear makeup and do not watch beauty videos is higher than the amount that do. And the bigger question that I want to end this video with is, what can we do when we recognize a problematic situation and we see a whole lot of talking about it? Should we engage in that and continue to discuss these brands that we're supposedly no longer using, but ultimately continue to publicize? And if there is another alternative, what would it be? Because one of the issues with that whole idea is that, again, for example, if we were to have never mentioned Kat Von D, if we saw this and just did nothing, then people would probably just continue using her products because they were pretty good. It's a real complex scenario, and I definitely do not have an answer. I just wanted to make this video as kind of a sounding off of my thoughts, because I was so utterly shocked when I looked at the bestsellers and the Social Blade combined. I'm just thinking, why is nothing working? So again, I really do want this to be a discussion type of video. I don't think I've ever really formatted anything quite this way, but I want this to be a talking point. So please comment below your thoughts. And as always, thank you for watching. Please make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, YouTube.